I was talking to an executive coach, and she was telling me about a difficult client that she had. And she had a hard time moving him toward action. And at one point, she said, I saw him deflect, and I did nothing. Now, there are two problems embedded in her statement. I saw him deflect, and I did nothing. The first problem is that the leader is deflecting away from their challenge and is continuing to avoid it. And the second problem is the coach also deflecting away from her challenge by letting the leader's deflection stand. So now we have a coaching situation where both leader and coach are avoiding their challenges in that session. Sound familiar? Ever find yourself there? I know I have. Both the leader and coach are handling their internal states in a chronic way that lowers the chance there will be any change of behavior. I want to introduce you to a way of thinking about what's going on when leaders don't move toward change. It has to do with how they manage their internal state. It's also a way we coaches manage our internal state when we don't act in these types of situations. It's what Murray Bowen, one of the founders of systems thinking, called the difference between chronic and acute anxiety. Chronic anxiety is when you experience something you don't like. You wish it would be different, but you're not doing anything to make it different, or your efforts are not sufficient to make a difference because any larger effort feels too risky, or you literally don't know what to do next. Denny Minow, a mentor of mine, often said tolerating chronic anxiety is like you're walking along and you realize that you have a pebble in your shoe, and it's uncomfortable and you don't like it, but you keep walking because you think to yourself, well, I don't have much farther to go, or I'd have to stop and make a big deal out of taking this pebble out of my shoe. Or it's raining and I'd get my sock wet if I stopped now to take it out. So you keep walking with the uncomfortable pebble in your shoe, tolerating that low-level but distracting issue. That's low-level chronic anxiety. It's something we can endure, and we think our choice to just keep going is worth the discomfort. Effectively, you're saying, I'm not liking what I'm going through right now, but I'm not doing anything effective to change it. But low-level anxiety can be like chronic stress, like being mad at traffic every day. It's a level of stress that literally causes systemic inflammation that over the long haul can be damaging to your health. Chronic anxiety can feed inflammation. The risk of tolerating what is seems like it's worth the trade-off, but it actually has built into it a growing risk of long-term consequences. Some of those consequences can be that you compromise more than you feel good about, you feel worn down by the constant nagging discomfort, you develop a health condition that worsens over time, and or your spirit shrinks a little and you feel vaguely deflated. In contrast, acute anxiety happens when either the external environment has degraded so much or your internal environment for tolerating the circumstances has changed so much that you now realize, I'm going to have to do something really different about this. I can't tolerate it like this anymore. When you realize this at first, rather than feeling relaxed about the prospect of change, your anxiety can actually increase. It takes your breath away. You start sweating just thinking about doing the change you're considering making. You wonder, can I pull this off? I've never done anything like this before. But you know you need to do it, and you decide to do it. You're walking into the unknown. It scares you, and you're going to do it. That's acute anxiety. Sometimes it actually starts to feel bracing in a good way. And acute anxiety like this is not only making the decision to do it, but also you are going to take action on it now. You know what the big difference is between chronic and acute anxiety? When you get to the point where you are willing to make a change in your behavior that you've not done before in this circumstance, you're willing to live through the consequences of your actions. Just because you decide to take a risk to change doesn't guarantee that the change will work out perfectly for you. Worst case scenarios, people might gossip about you and damage your reputation. People might break off their relationships with you. You might not get promoted, or you might lose your job. But this time, instead of tolerating a chronic situation, you are willing to live through even the worst because you'd rather act as the person you would respect rather than not acting out of your integrity. And you've developed a plan to manage even those worst case scenarios. So many times we meet leaders when they are in chronic anxiety. They seek coaching because they realize that they need to explore that space where they've been thinking, something needs to change, but I don't know what I need to do and I'm not ready to make a change quite yet. It's a privilege, really, to partner with clients to help them move from their chronic anxiety to their productive acute anxiety. At the end of our session with them, they may feel more nervous than when we started the session, but it's because they are a little more anxious, in a good way, about what they need to do, while they are also more grounded in knowing that they feel better about themselves as they do this next nerve-wracking step. What does this have to do with the presence passage? Though it's a privilege to do this work with leaders, it's far from easy. We have to get out of our chronic anxiety, our resting state, to help leaders get beyond theirs. Going back to the coach who, let's face it, has been each of us at some point, who saw the client's deflection and, as she said, did nothing, that is the time to recognize that we're marinating in our own chronic anxiety, a willingness to let this one go for the sake of some reason we tell ourselves, either a need to get through the agenda, or I'll catch it the next time, or maybe I'll hurt the relationship if I push this too hard. Questions to ask ourselves are, is this deflection something that's chronic in the leader? If yes, isn't the reason I'm here to help this leader get beyond their own chronic steady state? If the answers are yes on both counts, then you will shift into acute anxiety for a while because you are about to do something that will change your state and presence with this leader. You are about to stop tolerating the client's stalling, and that may feel risky to do in the moment. What helps when you shift from chronic to acute anxiety with a client because you realize you are not going to let them deflect, you are not going to let that slip by, is to call you both back to the present moment, even if you have to stop the action and share what you just noticed, even if you don't realize it for another 5 minutes into the conversation. But as soon as you realize it, you then stop the action. What helps me is to have a stem sentence, a conversation redirect in my back pocket, which I can pull out when I need it. Something like, you know what? Let's go back a second to that last question I asked you. I don't think I got an answer to it. More than anything, it's a reminder to myself to dive into an anxious moment that has the potential to become more productively acute for me and probably for them than the conversation we're currently having. This is one of those moments when you become a catalyst. When you face your acute anxiety and act with courage, you're catalyzing the leader also facing their acute anxiety and acting with courage as well. It's our own presence, the ability to express backbone with heart, that helps us be successful with leaders in helping them face their acute anxiety to really do something new.